Imagine, believers, I'm going to give a parable. Let's say now that you have a family and you have a daughter. But there's the thing, the daughter is really not a child of that father, who's the husband of the household. When she's older, she has red hair. But she notices that nobody in her relatives possesses red hair. So she thought it was a bit weird. Why does she has red hair and nobody around her has it? Everyone around her has dark hair and she has red hair. So she was thinking, what's going on here? So at a later age, she began to ask questions. How is this possible? And then she began to calculate. She realized that she was born very quickly after her last sibling, who was a woman. Let's say this woman's name is Martha and the red-haired chick is Vera. So Vera was thinking, hold on a minute, so mom just had a baby and within 2 months she was pregnant again? She doesn't say it's impossible, but she was thinking it's quite weird. So eventually she figured out that she was adopted and that the man who was now there as a father is not even the father of her older siblings. That's a new guy the woman married with later on, after the adoption. So Vera was thinking, this is quite odd that everyone grew up here thinking this man is our dad, even though he's none of our dad. And I'm not even, and that woman's not even my mother. So she was thinking, what's going on? It is quite weird. She found out that she was really the daughter of the half sister of that woman. So that woman was her half aunt. And she realized that her real mother died years ago. Actually, she died a few years after giving birth to her. And that her real father was a man that woman met in a bar once. So she was thinking, okay, so this whole family over here of that woman, her new husband, and us, the four children. Now those other three children are children of that woman, but that man is not our fathers. None of them are my parents. How could this have survived for so long and nobody knew about it? Then she figured out that everyone was in on it. Her so-called uncles, her so-called other relatives, they were all aware of it, including that she was adopted. She realized indeed that everyone was aware of it, but everyone played the game along. Why did they play the game along? Or else they would have to explain the horrible history of how this all came into being. Because like this, Vera's real mother was a target of envy by the community. She was a young red-haired woman, everything going for her. She met this guy, another redhead, and they had a relationship, and she was pregnant. During pregnancy, she was the victim of psychic attacks over and over again, and she almost lost the baby twice. So she got a charm at some witch doctor that comforted her, and the baby was born. That's Vera. However, the boyfriend she was with died in a car accident, due to the psychic violence. So he was he was murdered by the psychic violence. And the woman herself developed cancer and she died like 2 years afterwards. So now you had a 2-year-old baby girl without parents. And now, when the husband of that half sister of the redhead figured out what happened, he left her. Because he said, you cannot treat your own half sister that way. Murmuring behind her back, causing psychic attacks on her, almost her losing the baby. So that man left. And he wanted to take the children with him, But he lost a court case and he was gone. So then another guy came in who knew about everything, and he decided, you know what, let's take this Vera, raise her like her own daughter, and pretend like none of this ever happened. Now those older children were kind of aware that this man who came into their lives was a bit new. But they kind of forgot who their real father was, and they began to see him as their dad. So everyone in the community was aware of the crime that happened, namely the death of that red-haired couple, as well as the orphan that was left behind, namely Vera. So to cover up the violence of the community, they decided, you know what, raise this daughter as your own. She won't know any better. And when she has red hair later in life, you can just make up some excuse saying it's just a genetic deviation or whatever. But this Vera kept asking questions, and she figured out the truth. What hurt her the most was that most people were aware of it, but they played along. Why did those people play along? Because somebody wanted to deal with the fact that a psychic murder took place. Nobody wanted to face that people could be so evil. So people wanted to forget about this horrible fact. They wanted to cover it up with an image. And because nobody wanted to deal with the trauma, they all got along. Now, that was a parable, a very complicated one. But why did I make up that parable? Because I want to show you that in this world, people often get along with deception as long as the deception causes them to be relieved. People want to be left alone. They don't want to be bothered by anything. So if there's a deception that enables them to be left alone, they will get along with it, no matter how stupid or how retarded that deception is. So when you hear about conspiracies and false flags and mind control psychological operations, a lot of people tend to say, oh, that's just ridiculous. I mean, why would the government lie to us? That such people that ask a question, they're not thinking clearly. Okay? When it comes to power and money, people lie about anything just to get it in their hands. So in the government, there's a lot of scamming going on. That's true. So, but even people realize that governments do lie and cheat on their own population. When it comes to mass deception, they have difficulty accepting it because they think, for this to work, there must be so many people involved in it. And it's true. Many people are involved in it. Now, when it comes to mass deception, you have the perpetrators and you have the enablers. The perpetrators are the ones that actually did whatever happened, but the enablers are those who notice something is off, but they keep their mouths shut because they want to be left alone. So that is the big difference between the enabler and the perpetrator. Now, in the world, you have the enablers and the perpetrators, and then you have the masses. And the masses, they know nothing better than the deception. For example, you have people that still think that Osama bin Laden was behind 9/11. Even though for almost 2 decades now, it has been proven through observation that the whole story of 9/11 did not add up. Even journalists, even scholars admitted that nothing of the story adds up. The story was one pathetic lie. But here's the thing. Back then, in 2001, 2002, 2003, the few years after 9/11, there were many people that were aware that something didn't end up with that story. And it was way too obvious that the story didn't add up. But many of those people kept their mouths shut. Why? Because they did not want to become the center of controversy. So those people were the enablers. They enabled the deception. So they became participants in the scam that was going on. And then you had the masses that believed the story. But when it became too obvious to even the masses that the story didn't add up, many people wanted to forget about it. A lot of people, it's not just because it's almost 2 decades ago. A lot of people, just commoners, don't even want to talk about 9/11 anymore. Not because other big traumatic things have happened, just like the Paris attacks or the Brussels blasts. They don't really want to talk about it because they realize that the whole world they've invested in it's a lie if you have to admit 9/11 was a hoax. The moment you admit 9/11 was a hoax, and the moment you admit that this hoax was tolerated by many people who didn't want to find out what's going on, then you have to accept that you have many cowards amongst you that allow scams to happen. And if 9/11 is a hoax, how many more things are hoax? So if you have to accept one hoax, then you need to question all the other stuff. And commoners have invested everything they have in this thing called society. So when they have to admit that society lied to them, this is going to hurt. This is going to be depressing to them. So when it's too obvious that the hoax is really a hoax, they will stop talking about it. They will start to avoid the subject. Because I can still remember that around 2005, when people were pointing out that 9/11 was a scam, many commoners would just revolt, say, oh, those crazy conspiracy theorists, when are going to stop? Commoners would resist. But when 2007, 2008, 2009 came in, and way too many facts came out, and everyone could obviously see that, okay, this whole story is really pathetic, then commoners could not resist anymore by saying, oh, those are just crazy conspiracy theorists. The commoners had to face the fact that indeed it was a pathetic hoax that they couldn't hold up. Even mainstream media did not uh, perpetrate that hoax anymore because it was too ridiculous. So now commoners have to face that they were lied to, that they were scammed, and that they defended the scam because they didn't want to face that they were lied to. So what's going to happen then? They're going to stop talking about it, just like that. That's how worldlings are. When a when a mass deception has been exposed, they will stop talking about it if it never happened. And then this will be confusing to people that are awake because they will think, hold on a minute, you've all been lied to, you've all been scammed, you've all been conned into investing in a specific position. Now that all has come out, instead of asking questions to find out the truth, you just don't talk about it anymore. That's how worldlings are. That is how they are. And I'm telling you, on a local scale, so I'm not talking about mass deception, on a local scale, this happens all the time. You have households where the wife is cheating on the husband, and everyone around can sense that she's cheating because she dresses more provokingly when she gets out of the home. She wears more makeup. She's more often away from home. She's late. She stays later at work. And when she's with her husband, she tends to be short with him. So everyone can notice this woman is getting her cake elsewhere. Everyone can see it. But only the husband doesn't want to see that she's getting her cake elsewhere instead of from him. Even some of the children may notice that mom is acting weird, but here's the thing. For them to admit that the wife is cheating, then it means that they have to confront the husband with the fact that your wife is cheating. And if that happens, let's say the husband is not willing to face it. If that happens, and the husband has to face it eventually, the husband may lose his mind, and when people lose their mind, they become dangerous. So then you have to deal with the potential danger that comes from the husband losing his mind. So people think, you know what? We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to ignore it. We're even going to make excuses for her just to keep things quiet in this community. Because once this man finds out that this woman in whom he has invested everything is cheating on him, he may lose his mind, and there's going to be a lot of drama. You're going to have a broken family, and that's going to attract a lot of negativity. We don't want this. So she's cheating, maybe for months, maybe for years, and people around it know it, and they keep it quiet. Now, don't get things wrong. Sometimes it's wise to keep your mouth shut when you notice something odd. Just because you find out something doesn't mean you need to go out and spread it all around. Okay? Sometimes it's better for you not to get involved and to remain quiet, especially if it's something controversial that involves violence. That's true. But when a whole community decides to cover something up just to preserve their ease, that's that's really, really bad. But such things happen daily in society. So yes, when you figure out that a deception has been going on, whether it's locally or on a mass scale, Many are involved in it. Many are on it. Look, there are people in town that can't even stand one another. But even though they can stand one another, they will join one another in keeping things quiet. For example, you may have, let me tell this, you may have two families, both run, each has their own corporation, and they are rivals. They can stand one another. But they know that there is a population decline going on, and that because of that, they will need many migrants in that area so that the work continues. But both families know that when the months figure out there's a population decline, they are going to resist newcomers. And when they resist newcomers, both corporations will go down. And both corporations are needed in the economy of that area. So even though those both families that run those two corporations can stand one another, for their survival, they will join forces in keeping the hoax going. They will let many newcomers come in while pretending as if everything is fine. People in the world that are opposed to one another, even enemies of each other, will join each other to, to keep things quiet. And when it comes to persecuting believers, you can have leftists, people on the right, extreme right. You can have Antifa members and neo-Nazis. You can have people that are opposed to one another. They will join forces in shutting believers down. Why? Because when a believer walks by faith and he or she gains a leverage that can't be shut down, no worldling wants it. So even worldlings that are against each other will join forces against that believer. They are all in on it. And you may ask, why are they all in on it? They can't even stand one another. It doesn't matter. When it comes to preserving their relief, worldlings join forces. They do. Worldlings can fight each other every day to kill one another, and suddenly when a third party arrives with a leverage that they can't control, they all become envious and jealous of that third party. Now those two parties that were fighting each other to death now suddenly become one party against a new one. Such things happen all the time in the world. So yes, they are all in on it. Now I don't know which deception is going on around you, or I don't know what it is you're finding out now, but once you think that many people are on it, you're probably right. They're all in on it because they all have something they want to preserve, namely relief. Well, that's it for now. Keep an agreement with Christ. Keep agreement with Christ and be at peace.